but they unlock a whole other like layer of life in the way of feeling well, like energized, like having ambitions or having clarity into their entire life direction because of the breathing room when the
Yeah.
symptoms are not so noisy.
Oh, this is major. It's like the next big thing. Come catch the wave, yeah. Yeah, watch what's happening. A force of nature. Hit 'em like lightning. Be the creator of the next big thing. We're the movers and shakers. We are the dreamers, the makers. We stand on top of equators. We are the limitless. We got the future, no papers. We are the innovators. We have the focus like lasers. You know we doing it big. Oh, this is major.
Greetings and welcome to the Compromised to Alchemized podcast with me, your host, Dr. Neil Bolchandani. I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Nikko Kennedy. We actually did part of this interview, which you'll hear, as an Instagram live, and then we shifted over to record offline. Part of that was the technical difficulties with the stream, so you may not hear any of that, which is what I hope, but just so you know, we were navigating that. So Nikko did amazingly well to graciously navigate that with me. So I feel like we had a great discussion and you're going to love it. So who is Nikko Kennedy for those of you who don't know? She definitely has a phenomenal Substack following. So those of you that don't know the medium Substack is like an amazing just app, but it's a kind of like a most modern day blog, and there's quite a few prolific writers out there, all kinds of writers. I'm on there. My wife Dawn is on there. My wife has written more on there than I have for sure, Dawn Bolchandani, so I recommend following her work. But Nikko Kennedy is a best-selling Substack author. I believe she's got like up there, and she's really Substack tells you that, so that's pretty cool. She's in the parenting space there as her work as a doula, so definitely for anybody who's looking for more info, you'll want to check out her Substack called Brighter Days, Darker Nights, and it's really enjoyable. I've been investigating, poring over it. So she's also the research director and a science writer of the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. So, and actually I've really enjoyed her interviews on the Quantum Biology Collective podcast with Meredith. So, they're very much a team there. And where I first met Nikko was on a call that I did when Lindsay at BirthFit was interviewing me, and Nikko was somebody that was on there, and then Lindsay said, "You've gotta connect with Nikko," and my assistant Kat, also who is bridging worlds here with BirthFit and myself too, she was like, "Yeah, check out Nikko's Substack," and I've been kind of feel like there's more and more and more every time I look into more of what Nikko's work is. There's more to look at. She has such a wealth of knowledge. So she's got like 2 decades studying birth, 15 years as a doula. And, she just really traverses so much terrain in talking about topics like circadian rhythm, but all the way from gestation and, fertility to, all the way across the board of longevity. So, she can get really nitty gritty on talking about melatonin. She can tell some of the folklore or the history of the sun. I like that part of this interview so much, talking about the fire of the sun, and then she, as this research director role, she not only is an integral part of the certification, but she also kind of really fields the work of so many practitioners who come through that program, and she's part of the process of helping make sure that they get mentored. So quite a lot Nikko does. We came at this interview trying to hone in on this topic of circadian rhythm and the thyroid gland, and I think we covered some of that. So just so you know, we definitely went down a few rabbit holes. We have much more to say. I think I have much more to ask Nikko about, but I think we're also going to do future discussions. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoy the music from Lunalux, and I hope you also comment, like, follow, and make sure you follow that Nikko's work with her Substack, and then also if you're a practitioner, there is application going on, enrollment for the certification for the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. So you can definitely find that and tune in, because it's a great way for you to enhance your training. And I believe they have a cohort starting this summer in July. So check it all out. And I can't wait to hear what you think about this episode.
This is major.
Nikko, it's amazing to have you on Instagram, and then on my Compromised to Alchemized podcast. This is a rare live version that I'm doing, but I really felt compelled. And I would say that, your work with not only Institute of Applied Biology, and then you're gonna say all these words better than that, but then with your research with the Quantum Biology Collective, and also with your Brighter Days, Darker Nights, and your Substack, I've loved hearing you delve deep into these topics. And it's very much like a chronicler and a reporter and a journalist, but a scientist, a researcher, and then an advocate. You have so many roles. So I really feel like um, quite privileged to be able to interview you. And I felt like, let's just do this live so we can have people chime in and really get to know what this is all about, especially with our overlapping fields. So first of all, thanks for coming on, and I'm excited to chat. I mean, your work just fascinates me. I've gobbled up your podcasts that you've done with Meredith on the Quantum Biology podcast, and a couple other ones. And just even in a couple of our conversations, I can see how just a wide array of knowledge you have about multiple topics. Yes, this umbrella of quantum biology would be a really great one. But I love how practical your wisdom is, and not only what you're doing in terms of your own care of people, because you also have doula is what you do. You help moms, babies, people. So, but you're also in this time of not only the research, but bringing it to an institutional level, trying to change paradigms on a macro level, and that is both, you know, a challenging perspective, but it's an admirable one. So really excited for this conversation and the topics we're going to unfold.
Me too. Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. I do have a lot of things going on today. I thought the intersection of the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing, we could really kind of call it the biophysical, which brings in all of everything into the reality that we're all existing in, and navigating challenges come up, and also lots of really good things come up. So I'm excited to see where this conversation goes and to share with my people as well, because the work that you do is so important in terms of moms navigating. And then with practitioners, since you're also giving those higher level thinking, to think about the systematic, not just the individual, but how are we providing care to person after person after person. So there's a lot of things, ways that you're working, ways that we're working over at the Institute, that are very aligned.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get excited about delving in on the thyroid. What you know about the thyroid is coming from, multiple perspectives. And I will say, I want to thank you for your inspiration for me, just that little nudge that I needed to write, a more recent Substack article, meaning I just wrote it today, and I've written before. My wife, Dawn, has really been Neil, I think this would be good. And she's a brilliant writer herself. And so she's enjoyed Substack. And so I just wrote an article today, and it's the cosmic mandible and the thyroid, and I talk a lot about that. But I talk about the hyoid, the throat bone. I talk about vitality, and but I linked to your article. It was just I know you said it's just a brief article on 4 ways to support the thyroid gland. So
Yep.
any of my readers can hop onto that one and see what you've written about with that. So it's fun to have this overlap and. Um, yeah, perhaps like one, I mean, I have so many places to go, but when you think about thyroid, like what do you go right away? What like, from your lens and perspective, what really like provokes you?
Yeah. Uh, Two things that I'd like to share about thyroid right away. One, it is a sensor. It is right here in such a vulnerable place here in our throat.
Mhm.
And being positioned here, it's constantly grabbing temperature signals, light signals, the signals of our voice. Is our voice speaking for fear or clarity? All of that is happening and vibrating this spot. And thyroid, the second thing, right? It's here as a sensor. The second thing, what's a sensor is a part of a greater system. Like you mentioned, there's all of these physical pieces here in contact with the thyroid. Everything in the body is touching everything else. So the thyroid is regulating the whole system. It is not operating independently and it's very, very powerful. So when thyroid is going off, that's one of those things people are like, well, thyroid, and then it's either medicate or chop it out for the most part, right? And then there's other people who say, oh, you could do nutrition. Oh, like you could do body work. You could do all these different things. Like, yes, because the thyroid is part of a system as a whole. So you can target it directly. But to me, it's better to support the system as a whole and to realize that the whole body's having a conversation, of which the thyroid is one very important piece. But it's not just like a naughty child that you just need to go and put in detention or something.
Mhm.
Like it is
Yeah.
part of the whole system. That's really, really important towards any kind of work that you want to do with the thyroid, to get a more holistic view, and to have more ways of supporting, and guiding and giving it the signals, giving it the information that it needs to sense in order to deliver signals to the rest of the body.
Yeah, I love that. And can you talk to us about the big topic of something I know I've heard when it comes to the circadian rhythm, and when it comes to light, when it comes to how light is one of them, although there's many. Like, how does that influence thyroid, just on a basic level?
Right. The thyroid is a timekeeper. So when
Mhm.
looking at hyper or hypoactivity, essentially people are either getting accelerated and pushing through time too fast or too slow, operating
Mm.
behind. As you know, so much of life, so much of our agency comes through our voice and
Mhm.
the things that we say and the things that we speak, and when we choose to speak up or when we silence ourselves or when we decide to refrain from talking. So thyroid in a sense can also, like, the way that we're speaking, um, is influencing and influenced by the thyroid, because it's constantly vibrating. And so there's a whole lot of the dynamics of daytime rest and nighttime activity, and being either too leaned into life and pushing and pushing and pushing and talking and talking and talking, um, and metabolism running way too fast, versus being too slow, always behind, can't keep up, just kind of drowning in life, and always feel like you need rest, you never get. So the circadian rhythm is what helps us to feel alert in the day and sleepy at night. And a lot of people just think of it as, oh, I set my alarm for 6 a.m. So I have a good circadian rhythm because I wake up at the same time every day. And the circadian rhythm is so much more complicated than that. It's still really simple, but the ins and outs of the circadian are way more than just what time you choose to wake up and go to bed. So all of that's influencing the thyroid. And the thyroid's role there when it's picking up these circadian signals is it's the thyroid hormones are giving us an epigenetic fingerprint. So it's actually changing the way our genes fire. And it's supposed to be optimizing us for our local environment. And many people are living in a way where they don't actually feel the actual temperature outside. They don't know, their body doesn't necessarily know what time of day. It doesn't have all of the cues. And so it's not able to tune itself to the environment as well. Because like I said, it's the sensor right here. If you're outside,
Mhm.
that light is your body is actually absorbing it right here on your neck. We think of the circadian rhythm as coming through the eyes, but there's a lot going on right here too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love how just even started out by talking about it's right near the voice box. And so we talked about agency and you talked
Hmm.
about voice. And it's like there is this inextricable connection between our desire ability to communicate via the physical, vocal folds, but then also, the inner kind of ability of like, how free do we feel to express? And it is wild how sometimes we approach this, which is beautiful, from an emotional or even like um, what's going on with my inner world. And then some of us can like focus so much on the external world, right? Like, how can we heal the tissues and nutrition? And it's like, wow, it's this intersection of it all, um, that we are these multidimensional beings that are not like, oh, it's this tissue just here. Closely related are the thyroid and the vocal folds, and so they dance together all the time. So it is just such a good true way. I love the way you brought that up right at the outset, because I think that like we can see light as what gives us what we need. We're designed and created to have these rhythms of light and time. Of course, we're living in an altered kind of state where, I mean, I've heard you talk about this. I love the 1,000 hours outside, concept of
Yeah.
like 3 hours over, 3 hours a day works out to be. And it's like, we don't need to be outside 100% of the time. So it's really like a bite-sized, palatable approach to being just getting outside more. Because if we were outside more, like how many of our issues would be, much less. And um, so I often think like, what is it like for those who live in a way where that's hard to do? And then what is it like for those who live where they've already done the work, or they've changed their career, or they've done something like where they're like, no, I'm gonna make it a priority. And I could just think of so many people who tell me this. They're like, they come in and they're like, they've already gone through those journeys in healthcare. And so by the time some of these people get to me, they're like, my life has been transformed by honing in on the circadian rhythm. And so I love hearing that. What are some, like, for somebody, like, I'm going to go like really simple, but for somebody who's tuning in or listening and they are not there, they haven't done anything, and they want that bite size, like, what's the first thing someone, or what can they do something right now, like run outside and get 2 seconds of light, or anything like that?
Mhm.
What can somebody do to just change things right away?
Yeah, for sure. I always say start with the night, start with your evening.
Hmm.
Nighttime, like I've read thousands of studies and also worked with thousands of people, indirectly, hundreds of people directly talking with them. So I've never seen any adverse reaction to darkness. I've never read about any adverse reaction to darkness. So when we get to daylight and sunlight, which we will, we're going to have to talk about UV light, ultraviolet light to get to the thyroid. But there are real dangers with regard to light. And some people don't like to say that because, it's natural. But the truth is, someone who hasn't been being exposed to sunlight, who's been living an entirely indoor lifestyle, and then suddenly takes a vacation to the tropics, right? And spends 6 hours outside in direct sunlight, right? That is a recipe for sunburn, heat fatigue, right? There's all kinds of dangerous things, like really life threatening things, even that can happen from sudden overexposure to sunlight. with regard to mental health, likewise, suddenly going out into the real light when you haven't been exposed to it, like your eyes will hurt, and it can also trigger manic episodes in people who have bipolar or schizophrenia. So, with regard to the sunlight, it is so important, and there is a level of caution to have. Whereas with darkness, it's it's just the medicine that so many people need. So
Mm,
darkness is enforced darkness regimes are used therapeutically, and it's something that is very freely available to anyone. So I would say tonight, um, like ideally, you would spend about 10 hours tonight in a completely dark space. And when you wake up tomorrow, it's just amazing because even if you're not sleeping, just by being in the dark, and it only takes about 2 hours for your body to get into a full darkness mode. But some people aren't really getting that because everything's so disrupted that at night they have to wake up and go pee. They wake up and they need to
mhm,
go water. They wake up at 4 a.m. and they have racing thoughts. And so they get up and start scrolling on their phone. Like there's so many. And if you do that every 2 hours, every time your body is about to get into the melatonin and rest and relaxation and autophagy and all those good things, then it's stopped. And then it takes another 2 hours for it to wind down again because the daytime wake up cortisol switch just happens instantly. But all that being said, if you want to run outside right now and get some light, like absolutely. Um, it just takes a little bit of acclimation. And if you are doing your nights properly and then waking up and going outside in the morning before the sun's super high, then you will absolutely have just a much better time with sunlight. I've even like some of the testimonials that I get are people who thought that they needed sunglasses to be outside. They're like, it hurt my eyes,
mhm.
and then oh, I started going outside while the sun was low on the horizon, and now when I go out in midnight sun, I don't even need the sunglasses. Um, I see the question here in the chat. Should I switch from transition lenses to clear lenses in my glasses? And absolutely yes. When the light comes in, we need to be able to sense the full spectrum that's coming in, and the lenses are blocking parts of the color and parts of the UV, which our body is expecting those signals, and that's how it knows how to fire its genes, and that is going to completely change the way our metabolism works.
Love that. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's such good insight about starting off. There's many, uh, sages and wise people who say like the best way to, I mean, in so many ways, the best way to start your day is with the evening before. And so, yeah, I would love to ask you this question about um, the, do you think that when you have this dark sky, this nighttime sky, do you feel like it matters that much whether it's a full moon or what the lunar cycle is, how bright the starlight is, or is that all part of the nature perspective of dark night? So kind
yeah.
of like, can you touch on that for us?
Yes, absolutely. We have a deep connection with the night sky, and the place where I live, when the park nearby just actually got their dark sky designation. The Dark Sky
Mm,
International is working to preserve our star views because we have a lot of cultural traditions with regard to the constellations. And they're starting to become savvy to the circadian rhythm, the circadian effects of artificial light pollution. But you can see when people live in places that have a lot of artificial light pollution that we do see higher um, incidences of all kinds of things. Like it disrupts mineral metabolism, it disrupts the circadian rhythm. Like there's all kinds of things that we can see biologically happening. We also, the animals that we share and the plants, like plants have circadian rhythms and they need the lights to
mhm,
turn off at night too, for the plants to be optimally healthy. And there's a lot of cities that are starting to have dark sky nights during bird migrations. You see it with sea turtle lighting ordinances that when the baby sea turtles hatch, they're expecting the full moon over the ocean to be the brightest thing in the environment. They go towards that light. When the cities have their lights on at that time, the turtles were going to the city instead of the ocean and getting run over. So a lot of places that we're seeing this have actually put in ordinances to say we need that circadian lighting. We need the moon to be the brightest thing in the environment at night when it's full moon. Um, so we see different patterns with birth in terms of nighttime birth versus daytime birth. that without all of the artificial light pollution, we would see birth timing shifting with regard to that. Likewise, women's menstrual cycles tend to shift. And it also, there's a polar variation too. Um, I really love to talk about this.
Yeah.
In the winter time, when you live in a polar climate, so I'm in Oregon, so we have a bit of winter. We do get to like somewhat of a dark night, not nearly as much as even further north or in the far, and in the southern hemisphere as well. But when the winter happens and the sun isn't rising very much, so the sun's low down on the horizon, but the moon goes higher in the horizon. So like where I am in the wintertime, the moon influences us way, way, way more than it does in the summertime, because in the summertime it's lower on the horizon. In the wintertime it's higher on the horizon. So you will start to notice these things when you really tune in to the nature and what's happening around you. And you know, when in people who are not living in this industrial way, full of artificial light, tend to sleep less and in much shorter chunks than you do if you have 16 hours of artificial light per day. That artificially compresses your sleep into the 8 hours of sleep. So a lot of people think that they're being healthy by trying to track their 8 hours of sleep, but that 8 hours of sleep most of the time is you're still going to be deficient in darkness. Um, and your circadian health isn't going to be as strong as someone who is getting a more natural light variation and um and who's napping and sleeping, in just like 4 to 6 hours at a time rather than 8 hours or more at a time.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like you have like a just a wealth of knowledge about like so many different aspects of this because I'm like, oh, we're gonna go deeper down the rabbit hole here, and I don't know if we can come up because but I think it's so practical, and I just want to say like I'm trying to work on my sleep rhythms. I'm trying to improve something that's not really been ever ideal, and I can think about like I do love the sunrise. I mean, I so love it, but I really love that the meditation on the moon,
Yeah.
the nighttime sky, and probably my favorite time of the morning is astronomical dawn. And it's
Yes.
the four stages of dawn. In the
Yeah.
first one, astronaut, my wife's name is Dawn, so this actually was like when I met her, I was like, how can I learn more about dawn? And then
Oh.
I found out that the astronomical dawn was the first layer when it's still dark out and it's
Mm-hmm.
before the sun has emerged. And I usually even before that I felt like that's just this magical time to where I felt like not only the stillness, but just this I guess this vast potential of hope. But maybe I'll go deeper down and say, there's some people who like for me, I grew up with a lot of depression. I couldn't I looked at the night as like, oh, it's dark, and I felt the absence of the sun. You could say it wasn't seasonal affective. It was my own affect, my own issues that I struggled with that projected this like sadness when I saw it get dark. And I think sometimes that's a struggle is to like say like what is good for my body but what is good for my mind, and I know they connect. So um I don't know, do you have any wisdom for, and I feel me, I love the nighttime now. Any wisdom
Mm-hmm.
for somebody, because I think you're pretty deep in this,
Yeah.
for somebody who's like, okay, I want to tackle this, I want to get out there in the nighttime,
Mm-hmm.
but what are those people, what about those people who want to go inside and get cozy inside
Mm-hmm.
versus getting out there? Like, what is your advice to them?
Right. Yeah, there's absolutely. So humans, yeah, I love what you bring up about like the natural time of day that you feel like you have a special affinity to, because I've heard from a lot of people where they will be like, you know, this time of day is my jam, right? Like when I was young and like a child, for me, I always liked peak heat time of day. I was like 4 p.m.
Mhm.
That's my jam. I like it when it's as hot as possible outside. Um, Whereas, for other people, it's all different times. A lot of people have a big rise of energy in the evening, and that can be a sign of circadian disruption. It also can be a natural, like, affinity, especially with that lunar cycle. But the humans, ideally, we are operating a 24-hour society. Right now, that comes at the cost of circadian disruption because of artificial light and central heating and imported foods. Uh, but historically, it's a safety mechanism for us. We're group sleepers. So for one, I would wonder if you were living alone at the time that you were experiencing that feeling of sadness in the night, because it's very unnatural for humans to sleep alone. These like individual apartments, dorm rooms, like being in all of these ways that we are not very close with our family units in many cases. That can sense, because circadian cues, I always say like social cues are circadian cues. Um, So if we're not spending enough time in the day with people that we love and care about, and if we don't feel that family closeness of knowing that there's someone around who's going to be like on lookout in the night if something horrible were to happen, that they would be ready to respond, like those safety cues from our human pack and what they're doing are really important. So part of the big vision that I'm trying to energize and trying to raise awareness of is that as humans, we do need to be operating a 24-hour society. It's a superpower, and that each person can find their place or places that they're most comfortable, that they have that natural affinity, right? There are people who like to keep that night watch. There are people who like to keep that dawn watch. There are people who like to work really, really, really hard in the afternoon or in the morning, right? There's all different types of energy patterns that when we're in like a whole social unit, everyone finds their place around the clock.
Yeah, all of that. And you touched on something before, which was really if you could like magnify this a little bit, could you break down the what happens with melatonin and how much time we need for it to build that through line would be awesome to
Yeah. Okay. Melatonin. So
Yes,
melatonin
thank you.
is amazing. So melatonin is a hormone. Melatonin is an antioxidant. All different systems in our body use melatonin in different ways, and we can synthesize melatonin in different ways. So the main kind of melatonin most people are thinking of is from the pineal gland in our brain. It is released in a circadian pattern. And so it's high at night, peaks around 3 a.m. in the middle of the night, and it's negligible during the day. So in that sense, melatonin and cortisol are in a polarity. Cortisol should rise in the morning and then fall in the afternoon. So they go around the clock, dancing with each other. There's another kind of melatonin that is cellular melatonin. It's made from mitochondria, and it's actually made by infrared light stimulation. So that's where most people are not only deficient in darkness, but deficient in infrared light, because modern lighting, energy efficient lighting, the way that they figured out to make it energy efficient was by removing all of the infrared. So we have the bright blue that we can see with, but it's not hot to the touch anymore, right? Like an incandescent bulb is warm. You could put your hands up to it and warm it up. Whereas like the light coming out of our phones, if you touch your phone, it's cold usually, right? And our LED lights, they're cool to the touch. So it has the brightness, but not the infrared. That infrared our cells use, and with our theme of thyroid here, like the thyroid absorbs light, and so photobiomodulation has been shown to be very helpful for the thyroid, because we need the mitochondria to have plenty of that infrared energy so that they can be doing all the awesome things that they do. So our microbiome also produces melatonin. Having a healthy microbiome is very important for your melatonin. And then there are also dietary sources of melatonin that come in through the digestive tract. And that's the one that gets forced by like melatonin supplements. Um, so there's the four. And then for the mamas who are listening, the other sources of melatonin, the placenta creates melatonin. And that placental melatonin is not released in the circadian rhythm. It's going around the clock and nourishing mama and baby. And then for the breastfeeding mamas, their baby is getting a major source of breast milk of melatonin from nighttime feeds. So the melatonin isn't present in the milk during the day, but it is present in the milk during the night. So it's a balance between all of the melatonin that's flowing all of the time throughout the whole body, and then the circadian rhythm of melatonin coming through the pineal gland. And that is a hormonal process, so it takes time. Cortisol is stimulated through the nerves. So as soon as you, like if it's in the night and you're like stumbling and you decide you're going to get a cup of milk to help yourself go back to sleep, and you open your fridge and that bright white light shines in your eyes, that is like instantly, or like flip on the bathroom light or the hall light. It's an instant switch. All the melatonin gets shut down and cortisol flips on. Um, and then you turn off, you close the fridge, get back to bed, you've drank your milk or whatever you're doing to help yourself. And then now it's going to take about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours for that nighttime pineal melatonin from your brain, because it has the gradient of the hormones has to build up before it says that it's time to let the melatonin flow. So there's kind of a comprehensive view. There are different ways to support melatonin metabolism. And so we have that darkness. And that pineal melatonin is also refreshed in the morning. That's another reason that we, in the circadian health community, are always telling people to get out for that dawn and sunrise time. Because when you get that infrared light from the sun, that's coming in, telling your eyes, telling your thyroid, telling your whole body, like, hey, nighttime's over and now it's time to, reset for the next day.
Yeah, I think it's like such a important thing. You're just talking them really, in some ways, like I think there's concepts that we like, why do we not come into this world with this being what school teaches us, right? We can say how much would we know about ourselves,
Yeah.
how much would we travel through life with this level of certainty over who we are, what influences us, and sleep and rhythms like that every day. But I think so this is going to be for anybody that's viewing this. Thank you for journeying with us here. But I think if we go back to my StreamYard and we just do it that way, and then we'll share the episode when it comes out. So anybody who's jumping here in live, you've been able to tune in to the live version, and then the rest of the part's not going to be live, but it's going to be so we can make sure we have a better recording. Because I want to get into flow. Even really loved our conversation, and I really want to get into. This is going to be a teaser now, but the combination of the mandible, the jaw, right, and the
Yep.
thigh, and how they intersect. So that's the cliffhanger. So whoever's tuned in, thank you for being here. Go check out our Substack articles. But then we're gonna let you know as soon as the episode is out, and we'll maybe have that link.
All right, Nikko. Well, I would love to dive in a little bit more. We've talked, some about a range of topics. Dark sky. I love that. Talked about melatonin. We've talked about the thyroid. I've alluded to the mandible, the jaw some, but you've brought up, we've talked about the hyoid. There's just the vocal cords. There's so much here. But maybe we could do this, panning out. Like we can get into the nitty gritty anatomy, physiology, or even, I love that circadian rhythm and all these things that fall under the umbrella of the quantum biology fields, or like you said, the biophysical. I love that. When, if we kind of get into that and say, whether it's like the moms, that you've supported in your work, or also, the broader category of working with so many practitioners. I mean, you've worked with, it sounds like, so many practitioners. What have you seen, if we pan out here, what have you seen that people who come into this understanding, of the circadian rhythm and then the, quantum biology, what do you find that they're seeing, they're sensing, they're knowing? What does it bring to their lives?
This is a great question, because it gets at the reason that people seek healthcare in the first place is usually because they're not feeling well. So we get a diagnosis often, And that could be something like low thyroid hormone. But we didn't really go to find out about our thyroid. We wanted to go to find out why we're feeling so anxious, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever the symptom is. So when we get into quantum health, circadian health, it's supporting the body as a whole. So even if someone comes to a practitioner for one particular symptom that's really like the most troubling to them or the most stubborn, when they can start to support their body at the quantum scale, it connects to the collagen, the interstitial fluid, the rhythms that are programming the genes. So they see improvement not always just in the symptom that they originally were looking for support with, but they unlock a whole other like layer of life in the way of feeling well, like energized, like having ambitions or having clarity into their entire life direction because of the breathing room when the
Yeah.
symptoms are not so noisy.
Yeah. You get it as like, you can just see like the timbre of your voice because you're talking about like what really is purpose, like what well-being and health, but yeah, even more, you see what when people come, they're seeking what it is that would give them their lives, their livelihoods, the just this kind of, and I think that's what we all know. Yet it is easy to kind of say that some people, especially if they're in the throes of pain and suffering and struggles, it's hard to think, oh yeah, I need to figure this out because I want to get back to, they might know, get back to purpose, get back to fulfillment. But you kind of necessarily have to focus on the problems or have somebody focus on the problems in order to find solutions that would bring you. So it's kind of this paradoxical place. But I mean, this is why my podcast is called Compromised to Alchemized, because inevitably compromise happens where we are going to have or know people, that are dealing with the struggle and the discomfort to debilitation that could include. So I do think, there's so many amazing health solutions, and we do need to look into this realm of the quantum biology because it answers so many questions that so many kind of other sort of areas don't touch on. But even that, it's like that's such a huge tool, resource, and forward facing, frontier, pioneering. We need that because
Yeah.
we're going to get stuck if we don't. And also I could feel like that could fit really well into one of my beloved terms, which is alchemy. But down at its basic term, it's this transformation of lead into gold, and it's seemingly a magical process, but I like to call it a non-linear process. So that meaning like it takes more than just a list of things; it takes a synergy of things. And I think when I say synergy, I think of systems thinking, pattern recognition, the algorithms that are always running through somebody like your mind. When you're braiding together, what's going to help this person or these people. And well, so I'm going to dive into that because I really want to unearth a little bit more of that before we dive into the anatomy of some of these things. But I what my simple question is, what started you on that path? And I want to ask it from the lens of The Alchemist and Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist. He talks about this concept called personal legend, and it's um, this moment in the book, right, where the old king, this mystical king, Melchizedek, asks this shepherd Santiago, where he says to him, the universe conspires in your favor when you're in pursuit of your personal legend. And legend to me means your destiny, calling, purpose. And what do you put on this planet to do? And also like a legend on a map that has like notations for like, an inch is like 10 miles or whatever it is. And there's trees here. And like, how do you know that you're what's your way of checking in with yourself that that planet purpose is true or accurate, or that you're staying on that? So love to ask you that question, Nikko. With all of what you're doing, like, what is this personal legend of yours, if you could share?
Ooh, my personal legend. Wow. That's a really great big question. And, last time we spoke, we shared a little bit about it. And, in some ways I could make it really simple in this kind of way that almost seems maybe trite, but it is a truth, which is that I was born on the summer solstice. My name, Nikko, means ray of sun. That's what my parents told me all the way growing up. And one of the things that's always inspired me is like this moment of birth and knowing the challenges with the way that I was born. And later on, seeing a home birth when I was actually 6 years old, my younger brother.
Wow.
And he had the same complication that I did, which was a nuchal cord.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, nuchal cord in a hospital setting meant emergency C-section. In my brother's case, it meant the midwife unwrapped him as he was born and did a little resuscitation at home. So midwives were kind of like an amazing hero in this childhood story that I'd heard. So I'd kind of thought, not like I could go back and save myself or my mom or anything, but like, this is happening all the time, that the way people are born, the way women are birthing is impacting people's, futures. Later on, when I really decided to take birth work seriously, I was meditating, and the kind of like heard a voice that literally came out of the sun to me. And later on, when I was kind of like questioning that and like, why me? Like, why should I? What do I even have to say? And I had got the impression that it was about the sun, but it was about the sun. And I'm like, okay, well, like, here I am. My name means ray of sun. I was born on summer solstice. Like, I was basically named after my birthday, which that's cool. I'm really interested in how baby's born. I think midwives are really awesome. I think how we're born really matters. And I was studying mythology. I said this was going to be trite and simple, which, if you would just want to say, like, I'm trying to elucidate and illuminate, use sunlight, dispel the illusions around sunlight, the idea that it's fully dangerous, which, as you remember, we were talking about, like, yes, the sun can be dangerous. It's also a healing force. All of the old legends say that. Whether you're looking at like Apollo, he was like a healer and a warrior. The sun is similar. It's a healing force and a very difficult force. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the sun was birthed each day. Sun was birthed, went across the sky in a chariot, and then died each night. So the red of sunrise was the red of the birth waters. And the red of sunset was the red of a bloody death.
Wow.
And so birth, death, sunlight, circadian rhythms, right? It all just kind of flows together. I think that I have a unique ability to put together all of these things. And that it's really like across the lifespan. If we are attending to the natural rhythms, I think there's a lot of good that we can each do in our lives that we can't do if we're out of sync and unable to receive the messages and the guidance that can, kind of it rises from within, and it can also arrive from without. I think there's just a lot of listening that when we're not experiencing so much pain from chronic health conditions, that we're each more able to do the good work that we're here to do.
Yeah. Well, I've not heard in depth that much about the sun and the origin of the light of red, and I love that. So I love hearing that. Yeah, because it's like a powerful, potent, um, in one way, scaffolding and understanding, and then yeah. So I can see you're a storyteller and a philosopher. You add that to your titles too, because so knowing where you come from is so important, because I think you carry depth and a reservoir. And I think especially when you can connect your name or who you are to your purpose, it doesn't always have to match. And these are the things that we get to do when we're creating, like, or falling into, or hearing who we are. It's like there's such a connection. So then the second part of my question, I want to hear, how do you what keeps you in that, or and you could say, like, I'm going to list a couple of the things, because, well, first of all, I thanks to Kat, my on my team, who is the one, and Lindsay with BirthFit, they're the reason that I know you. Although, and Kat was like, you got to check out Nico's Substack, it's pretty awesome, Brighter Days, Darker Night. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. But I feel like for you, the more I look into things, the more I'm seeing. It's like the work you're doing. I've seen the conversations that you've had on with Meredith on Quantum Biology Collective podcast, and then the work you're doing. Even when we were on that first Zoom of talking about my work and how I could in essence become part of a bigger collective of tabulating and compiling this research that's going to really inform, like, a seemingly unquantifiable and almost seemingly untenable, like, category of, like, what is health and what is life. So I feel privileged to be kind of in the midst of the work that you're doing. So all these things, I'm like, oh yeah, personal legend there, personal legend there, but you give us this, but what's beneath all that? So likewise, how in life, what's led you, kind of what led you to collaborate and work with Meredith, with the Quantum Biology Collective, and then broader to that, how do you know, with these things that come up, how do you know that they're in alignment, or how do you know that this is part of your personal legend? What are the ways?
Yeah, one of the really common threads with the practitioners that I've worked with is so many people come to this because they've been through their own healing journey. And that is also the case for me. Like I shared, I had a birth story that was told as, it was what it was, the way that I was born.
Yeah.
But later on, in terms of my journey of understanding light, just not as something like being a child and thinking, I want it to be as hot as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the funny things that I enjoy is like when we would go shopping and the car would be out in the hot tarmac. We would like come into the car after it's been sitting there and it's like so hot. It's like, and maybe that's my Finnish ancestry, but it feels like as
Mm-hmm.
hot as a sauna. I always love that. Some people are like,
Right.
like
Yeah.
let it air out before they get it. I'm like, bake me in this.
That's hilarious. I love that.
So, I really feel it in my body when I experience pleasure with the natural heat and cold. Like right now we're outside and it's cold and I can feel like it's almost like
Mm-hmm.
an ice cream headache. My ears are like really, really cold, but inside I have this fire that's coming because my body is strong against
Mm-hmm.
the elements. So these kinds of like it's a very physical
Mm-hmm.
feeling that I have when I'm on track. My dark night of the soul with regard to my health came from computers. When I was going, I decided I wanted to help women with their birth. And at the time, it was like, well, becoming an OBGYN is the like highest pinnacle of that. So I was going to school, driving myself to reach that pinnacle. And I also was like working to help support myself and my family. I had a young daughter. My husband and I were both working a lot. I had it was like that era where school had started to become online, work was online. So I had an online job working East Coast from Pacific. I would log on to the computer screens 4:30 a.m. blasting myself. I was taking online classes. I was commuting for classes. Um, every single day was working from like 4 until like 10 or 11 p.m. And my immune system was where I met that stress manifested for me. So I started having horrible, like debilitating seasonal allergies. Right? I'm like going. Like every single moment is like straight A. I'm going to be like the best in my company. I'm going to be the best in every single class that I take. I'm going to be the best mother. Like, right? Like everything was like that drive. Like I was so leaned in. I was like so leaned in. That I would have these allergy attacks where I would have to lay on the couch and not be able to do anything whatsoever. I remember I had to go in person for an exam, and my allergies were so bad I couldn't see the page. My eyes were just watering and watering. I was sneezing, like I was disrupting the whole class. It was disgusting. I couldn't stop sneezing. I couldn't see the page. And when I would try to take the medication, it would just make me feel even worse. So my healing path out of that was indirect. My husband had this kooky idea that I needed a red light filter on my computer. So he installed Flux and set it up. And it was the wildest thing because I was still so driven, but in the evening, after the sunset, my computer would automatically dim its screen. And suddenly I couldn't keep working and doing my like homework and everything until 10 or 11 p.m. anymore. Like I was too tired. And I would log in and it was in the morning before sunrise. And likewise, my screen would still be dim. And I was like, like, why am I even doing this? Like I was addicted to the blue light. And then, you know, he would also like kind of like dim the house. So he really started me on this path of circadian rhythms. I didn't really think that much. I didn't really notice that much, but I decided to quit the job. Like this isn't sustainable. So I quit the job and started my own business. I'm like, I can side hustle and do this. I can freelance and do what I'm doing and be able to keep my own schedule rather than working for a company. So I did that, which also made it so we could take family walks again and do different things. Like I didn't have to be so chained to like this particular schedule. The next year, it's like, wow, that was a really mild allergy season. How cool. I didn't tell you the other immune system thing. I developed allergic contact dermatitis. So if I used the wrong soap or hugged someone who had used the wrong soap or sat on their couch, I would get allergic contact dermatitis on my eyes. They would swell up so gross. I could hardly see, and they would be like bright red, and then all of the skin would flake off. Like I was disgusted. It was horrible. It was so gross.
That's so hard, yeah.
And that reaction would last for 3 weeks after a single exposure. And I didn't know what it was. And when I went to the doctor, they didn't know. And then later on, I was like, hey, I figured out what it was. It's this one soap ingredient, hydrolyzed quinoa protein. They're like, wow, good for you. Avoid it. I'm like, but like, why? And they're like,
right.
You're lucky you figured out what it was. Most people never do. But anyways, that also, I was like, after that first year and then the second year, I was like, hey, another like really mild allergy year. And now that I think of it, like my eyes, I haven't had a reaction. I haven't had that allergic contact dermatitis. Like those symptoms, they just faded into the night. And then I was like, hey, I think it's the circadian rhythm thing. And so eventually that piqued my interest, and I just kept learning more and more about it, and eventually figured out that it actually related to my work with moms. I figured out that I didn't actually want to become an OBGYN, so that's why you find me now as a doula, which is non-medical support. One of my colleagues, she's like, Nikko, you are so much more than a doula. Like, why do you advertise yourself as a doula? And I'm like, because moms, for the most part these days, more than anything, need non-medical support. That is like the big missing piece, the village.
Yeah.
You know, and then working in quantum biology is a perfect overlay because I can give like this evidence-based information. As a doula, my scope of practice says I don't prescribe, I don't diagnose, I can only give evidence-based information. So when I decided to start teaching, I was super meticulous. And what I did when I was in school and I realized that I didn't want to become an OBGYN, I pivoted into science writing. So then I took a whole bunch of statistics, research design, like all these things. I was like, I need to be able to understand academic research and translate it for everyday people. So that was how I spent my last year in college, wrapping up. And once I decided that I wasn't going to take the exam to get into medical school, that's what I did instead. So after I took the certification at AQB, which we are enrolling again right now, so anyone who's interested in like circadian health, quantum biology, light biology, cellular hydration, mitochondria, all that stuff, we're training practitioners. So it'd be a great time to jump in. I mentor all the students coming through and help them figure out what their particular niche is, like their intersection, how this applies to their work, and then what they're going to go forward. And then we're also, as you said, getting ready to do this research project where we're actually going to document and get from real practitioners using these modalities, like totally publishable research to grow the field and have these insights coming out. So yeah, that's really exciting. So Meredith, before I became the research director, I was a student. I went through the program. She had me on the podcast. She found my Substack. And because of my work as a doula, I'm like, I can't just say these things without backing them up, because everything I say is going to be reviewed by a midwife or a doctor, an OB. Like they all need, like everything has to be completely transparent, where I'm saying like, you as a client can take this to your doctor and say like, hey, I want this included in my birth plan or whatever. So that was how like it all just came together. So Meredith wanted me to teach at the school. She was like, hey, could you teach a class about how you do research? I'm like, sure. Then I taught the class and she's like, hey, we want to start a research program. Will you lead it? I'm like, it would be an honor. So that is how things will all kind of come together, and why there's so many different layers to the work that I'm doing. It's been I love that word nonlinear. We use it a lot, and that's my journey has definitely been nonlinear.
Yeah. Well, I'm very kindred. Like I feel like I started to know you more, and then I'm like, oh, and it feels like I know Meredith, but then I'm like, oh, you've had a lot of students come through, and I think I filled out the wait list to get on this practitioner research kind of info when it comes out, which is coming out soon. It sent me to the interest form for the certification program for the IB. So I actually filled it out. So now I'm like, not necessarily, but no, I put on there all the details. I'm like, I feel so resonant. I feel so kindred. I feel like quantum biology, and if you kind of defined it, and then I'll ask you again, but it's so categorizes like this cross synthesis of what it takes to live a healthy life, and how, but it's it's very it's so significant that it's approached with this spotlight of intense like you said, scrutiny in a way. Like we need it's like this is all so important that it's really needing to make it to where it becomes more understood, to where it's not just things that are talked about anecdotally, to where it's not just things that are, a few people, it's relegated to a few people who are experts. Because truly, I love what you're doing. You're getting, all the people out there to, contribute the data, so that really we can see how many people truly actually are practicing some aspect of this, but maybe without the level of understanding, the support. I mean, obviously to be mentored and to have you there, that's pretty extraordinary. So what's the length of the program for those who are interested?
It's 6 weeks. And then we have another submission and then like the submission window at the end. The big culmination of the pro. So it's a hybrid program. There's modules. You can enroll. You get instant access to the modules. You have lifetime access to that portal for learning. And then there is a live cohort portion. So we bring in expert faculty every single cohort to do live Q&A. So you watch the modules and then you come in and talk to the practitioners and they can answer your questions. And then we also have coaching. Meredith does coaching. And then I host office hours. Kathleen Horstmeyer is the one who looks at the final projects, which to me is the most exciting part. Every student that comes through the program, in order to get certified, needs to complete a project where they show their synthesis of the knowledge. And then Kathleen grades those through. And then last year, she helped us to get accredited through the American Naturopathic Medical Association. So our course automatically counts as continuing education for naturopaths, but you don't have to be a naturopath to take the program. But there's also now an option for board certification. So some students, not all students, will go on and take that exam through the ANMCB and agree that they're going to do continuing education in this field to really like be advanced quantum biology practitioners. So that's not for everyone, but it is an option for those who are ready to take it to that next level and really become leaders in the field. So it's fairly quick, 6 weeks, very in-depth, 9 modules plus tons of bonus material. And then also we give you like resources that you can use to grow your practice and bibliographies. Every single module comes with a bibliography. I hand wrote all of the bibliographies for everyone.
Wow.
Every single module plus one for the course as a whole. Like it's very, very scientific, very evidence-based. And the modules are all taught by different faculty members too. So it's not just learning from one person. You get to hear from like many different practitioners, how they're using this knowledge, how they're synthesizing it, how they describe it. So you learn a lot of metaphors and a lot of ways that when people come to you with like those different kinds of questions, that you have like an arsenal of ways that you can, maybe arsenal is not the right word.
Well, I mean, you said fire within you, right?
Yeah, it is. My fire is hot right now.
So, I mean, arsenal kind of goes along
Yeah.
with that. Although I know, yeah, the connotation of war and that, I get it. I like to go towards words of nourishment and healing too.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. So you have many different spices in your cabinet that
there
you
you
can
go.
share with
Spices.
with
I
people
like that.
depending on what kind of support they need, right? Because some people might need more support with their nighttime and darkness or their EMF, their like the exposure. Occupational hazards are a big deal for circadian disruption and like the work that you do where you're helping people with their connective tissue. It's such a big deal because, and we have a lot of body workers come through our program because, again, this biophysical paradigm, and you've seen that when you do an adjustment on someone and suddenly different parts of their body that there's been it's like there's a kink in the system. So the communication comes to a certain point and then it stops.
Yeah.
When that suddenly opens up and that communication is going through, like we explain how that is the bioelectric process. Anything dealing with charge transfer is actually dealing with the quantum scale of electron jumping and proton jumping. So it's communication, it's instantaneous, it's rapid, but also long lasting, especially when the signals are right. Because as you know, sometimes people get an adjustment and then they need that same adjustment over and over because their lifestyle, like that whatever the kink is like a physiological adaptation to certain things. So
Yeah.
and when they get that, when the light and grounding and like all of these other habits, suddenly they have the clarity and they actually start changing their day-to-day life. And then suddenly when you do that adjustment, the sheet smoothens, everything's talking to each other, and then it doesn't go back into that kinked position again.
Yeah, I love that. And I was just thinking about like I loved how the those concepts are all so important. In fact, like when I'm working with someone and I'm looking into, I love fascia, the connective tissue, but I'm looking into the muscles, the bones, the organs, and how it all connects, the movement patterns, how does gravity affect someone and your alignment? And, I mean, honing honing into the thyroid, gravity affects the misalignment or alignment of the thyroid so significantly. And then I'll say that, like, if I take one example, when I'm evaluating someone, and I will go to this one place that I have, been delving into for the last 8 to 9 years, even though I've been practicing for nearly 18, um, and is the floor of the mouth. The floor of the mouth is this place, but it's really this window, and it's a place that I'll feel and look at. But then what I'll do is say, okay, I feel the tension there, which for me, I know if there's tension there or with the tongue or with the lips, or I'll know that there are 70 areas in the body that likewise have this
Yeah.
tension.
Yep.
Or if I find a few areas in the body where I'm like, oh, right, it's that right kidney that's misaligned, or ooh, the left piriformis muscle, or and if I get a few of those, I'm like, ooh, you probably have floor of mouth tension, tongue tie, or narrow maxilla, narrow palate, or anything that comes from that like fourth, fifth week of gestation where someone's forming in utero. But
Hmm.
this could all be going on, and I could get them on the table, and I could be like, okay, your kidney, this. And I'm like, ooh, no. Let me muscle test or intuit or look into what's going on with your EMF, your light sensitivity, any sensory issues, if you have toxins, pathogens, any of these things. And I'll test into all that, and then I'll say, okay, what's going on here? I mean, so many words that I could say that I test into. But then I'll go into this place that I call the three wheels, which is a download that I got, probably, boy, 16 years ago, almost. Maybe, maybe not that long, but a good amount of time ago. I saw this download of these three wheels, which are these wheels within people, but it just is a rubric to help me go into, if that emotion happened connected to some pain or suffer or trauma that happened at like 5 years old, I'll sometimes hear those words because then it was really the emotion that was stiffening the body, so to speak. That was
Yep.
why the fascia wouldn't loosen. And of course, this is like a topic that we could say that we know this. The body keeps the score. I wrote this in my Substack article today too.
I
It's
I
like,
love that.
you know what I didn't write though? I didn't now I'm like, "Ooh, I forgot this part," or, "Yes, the body keeps the score when it's a struggle," but, we are wired by sound and light and frequency, so the body keeps the score like a musical score, like the beautiful things we hear and the entrainment into good rhythms that we can have, when
Hmm.
we hear that song or the sound of a loving voice. That's the score that can tune us into health and vibrance and vitality. So usually my interactions with someone that's going through this, I'll speak to what's wrong or what the words that they might have heard, that I'll hear these whispers or I'll feel in my body these things very empathically and telepathically. It's just how I've been for many years. I've known this, but
Hmm.
then I'll mention it aloud, and it's just the verbal utterance of it aloud gives affirmation and validation to someone's tissues and body, so that then I'll check back in the floor of the mouth and it's loosened, and I
Yep.
haven't done anything. And so that
Hmm.
moment I know we are not in the physical, temporal, Newtonian world. This is in that in between space, the liminal space, the quantum space. So for me, I've been navigating that terrain for so long that it's so right. I'm like,
Yep.
this is just who I am. And I love it when some people who are like, I didn't know that's what this was called, but I feel like I know what you're saying with my body. And I feel like it makes sense. And now it helps me understand so many other moments, and it just gives them like affirmation, right? So I feel like that's got to be a part of your work too, is when you're, whether you're with people in the moms and babies space or practitioners, you're like, it's just like a validating what they've known, right? It's like, yeah, this is
Hmm.
like, this is so simple yet so profound, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, oh, sunlight feels good. Oh, I like when I actually give myself enough time to rest.
Mm.
Oh, food is more than just, you know, nutrition. Food is, nourishing the body as a whole. We recently got a module from Sarah Pugh, who is a character that you might enjoy a lot because she's very very much blending. She's a PhD, um, but she's also like, if someone, they want to like, they want me to try this thing, like if they're going to hand me a bunch of crystals, I'm like, it can't hurt me, I'll try it. She's like, if they want to wave some technology over me, then I'm going to be like kind of skeptical, but if it's like some ancient thing that people have always done, like I'm game to try that and to look into it. So she did our nutrition module talking about um so much about how our mindset and the context within which we're eating um is going to change the way that our food is digested, right? Like, like you could have the most nourishing meal in front of you, but if you're all worked up while you're eating it and not, chewing it and not enjoying all of the like things around you, that you still could get a horrible tummy ache from that. Um, Whereas something that's maybe not so healthy, but you eat and you're in a really nice, relaxed state and you're laughing and friends are around and you're relaxed, that your body is going to be in that parasympathetic sympathetic state to do that digestion. So there's definitely a lot to it that is um like belief oriented, and not in it, but like the belief has a real manifestation in the physical. Another one of our faculty members, Dr. Stillman, often talks about the placebo nocebo effect and saying, we know the placebo nocebo effects are real as practitioners. So like a scientist is like, we need to control the placebo effect. Whereas he's like, if you're a healer, you should be like, how do we activate the
Hmm.
placebo effect? How do we deactivate the nocebo effect in the people that we're working with? Like if we know that that's a means of working, rather than being like, well, it's non-physical, so we exclude it. Instead, it's like, no, that should be like something that we're actively working towards.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And you're referring to Leland Stillman, correct? Yeah.
Leland Stillman, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I've been meaning to reach out to him. He and I are both on the life team.
Oh,
Ben
great.
Greenfield's team of healers that all carry our own respective specialty and expertise. And so I've known Leland's been on there. And then another person we have in common is Molly Eastman.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I just hung out with Molly. She was an hour south of me when her husband was speaking at an event, and we connected in person for the first time. But then also, we've both been on each other's podcasts, so I love that. Like it's such a cool interlapping world, interlapping, overlapping,
Yeah.
interrelated, interconnected. But yeah, I think the kind of the wealth of the knowledge of even Catherine Clinton. I've seen her interview in her work, and I love how she talks about fascia and she talks about quantum. And we've had a couple conversations, and I think it's like I think back when I remember when I first started chiropractic college back in 2005. I was really studying quantum mechanics before then, and I was really intrigued by the possibility of that. It was making so much sense to me, and of course, I'm an amateur student of that, but it really influenced me in how I pursued looking into something like chiropractic because for me, I'm not a mechanistic practitioner so
Mm-hmm.
much, even though I love chiropractic in its basic form. I'm much more a hybrid fusion practitioner that has developed what I do, and it's kind of a fluid process that's just as much about um, visualization in the mind as it is about what we do with the body, although it's very manual therapy as well. But it's kind of like I'm kind of like excited to talk more about how much we can keep in mind that what got me into this was saying there's just so much more that's possible. I grew up, loved my dad, and he felt as a cardiologist who was trained in medicine in India, came to Western the world, like you had to kind of let go of some of the natural ways to ascribe to Western medicine. And it
Mm-hmm.
was always a war within him of like, it didn't make sense to him why you would do all these things and prescribe all these things when the answer was so simple. So
Yeah.
he's a preventative cardiologist, but I kind of got the brunt of the medicine part of like take these things to heal this, and that was really the antidote.
Mm-hmm.
When I got through and I went into chiropractic college, I got a paradigm which was we have within us the power to heal. And so how can we access that? So I
Yeah.
really loved that. Um,
Yeah.
and then the agency and voice plays a huge role in this, because how many moms have I seen gaslit, invalidated? They've come in and they're like, I knew my baby had a tongue tie, or I knew there was something else going on. But they were told by somebody, maybe well meaning, but that didn't understand the breadth of understanding of health, holistic health, and let alone quantum health and
Hmm.
biology. And they were told all of this. And so they allowed their voice to be quelled and shut down. And so many people, when they come in, I might have all the answers, but I'll ask a person, especially if it's a parent and especially if it's a mom, I'll say, what do you think? And then she'll say, well, I think it's this, this, and this. And I'm like, you know more than a lot of practitioners right now, because
Yeah.
that's mother's intuition and skills. So I feel like sometimes for me, my best role is just to say, what do you think? And see how much somebody knows, because it's hidden, but it's
Yeah.
there. So I think that's something, like you, as somebody who's navigated with a lot of families, have probably seen as well. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, can you speak to that? Speaking of voice, speaking of that, can you speak to that and how, we carry these paradigms of, like, as a practitioner and all this information, and then just as a person, and how do you kind of marry those worlds when you're journeying with families and helping, especially now that you're writing articles, your research is getting out there and it's getting to people who may not have this certification. They may not go into any of this, but they're going to know
Mm-mm.
deep within, like, this is
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. So many families, moms, when I'm talking with them, that they do just feel so validated. And also so many practitioners who know that there's more than the paradigm that they're within. That paradigm world is so key. Because yeah, as individuals, we exist within a set of beliefs, and the people that we consult with, like their beliefs, right? There's like all we're, we kind of just get into this like little bubble that can be hard to break out of. Because of being such social beings, we learn best from each other. Um, I just had the most lovely chat recently, and next time we try to go live, we should do it in Substack. The platform's really good, and it will go to
Okay.
both of our publications, and we can send it
Oh,
out. So like,
I didn't
and
even know that you could do that in Substack.
it's new and it's really, really awesome. I'll send you the
Cool.
booking link because I'd love to have you on to talk with the moms, and they'll
Yeah.
come in and ask you all kinds of questions if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Um,
I would love to.
yeah, that just came to mind because
Okay.
I was talking with mom, and I was saying that this grassroots sharing, mom to mom, is where
Mhm.
I'm really excited about this quantum biology, and as more moms are getting this way, because we have access to the epigenetic fingerprint, and that's one of the big places where medicine will be like, well, you have the genetic risk.
Mhm.
Sorry. Like,
Yeah.
well, wait, like, did these things, right? There's like all of these different, right, like the de novo genetic mutations, and we're like, okay, but why is this happening? And so we start to see that there's some really fascinating quantum epigenetics. So like, I'll go into that deep science because I have the background. I've been trained to do
Mhm.
that, and I'll go and like be reading through all of this and reference it against like thousands of studies existing in my cloud, and be like, ooh, and then ground that into um like for a family. There's a lot of families who have had like extreme geographic migrations. That's one of the big topics that's been coming up lately, is like, we have these people from, living thousands and thousands of miles away from where their ancestors were living, and then they're having these particular health manifestation because there's these like cultural heritage of the foods that we eat and the different kinds of
Mhm.
things that we do that maybe aren't possible. Like, if you are expecting to be able to give your baby a bright sunny oil massage, um, and that your ancestors would have all been doing that, but now you're living in Canada and it's sub-zero outside, you can't go take your baby out for a sunny oil massage, but like, that's what you got when you were that age.
Mhm.
So you can actually see um, families that have been within one geographic location for several generations, being adapted to that environment, whereas families who are newly migrated to those areas having a much harder time. And you can see it in their hormone panels, their chronic disease rates, right? So that kind of thing, like, it's very academic, but it can be grounded into, like, how can that family adapt more quickly? Do you actually want to re-migrate to another place that's going to be more harmonious to the kind of signals your body's expecting to get? How can you, all of these little lifestyle things, the imported foods, right? Like, what about the local foods? Like, how are those coming in? There's so many things that, like, they're very cerebral, but then they play out in, like, what is this mom cooking for breakfast every single day? Is she going to be, cooking imported rice? Or is she going to be cooking like some eggs that were from here, even if that's not what she grew up eating, right? Like breakfast cereal was a big conversation we just had inside of my Substack for the paid subscribers. The moms, we have a group call every month and we just like get together. And so that was a big question we were talking about, like, what do you eat for breakfast? So, like,
Yeah.
sure, it's informed by science, but it's also like, well, where were your ancestors? What season is it right now? Like, how old are your children? Right. And then we're like swapping recipes. And then so, like, is that it's just a mom circle, right? But it's also informed by like the knowledge that things are different for us now than they were for our grandmothers and great grandmothers. And so how do we respect that difference? And then how do we go forward to say, like, we need to like adapt and there are things we can do to make it happen fairly quickly.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, bringing in, I think it's like ethnobiology and bringing these elements of like our ancestry. It's like that's integrative. I really, I love integrated healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
integrative medicine, but like
Yeah.
really blending together all these things. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's the really the widening um, integration and integrative aspects. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that. So I'm thinking, yeah, this is your Substack, and so yeah, I'm going to ask you some
Mm-hmm.
questions about that. So,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, there's like the everybody can go check it out to some degree, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
the paid part that has some more where people can go for a little bit more, and it has these different offerings that you have, which is like the monthly call, right? Is
Yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
the one of the main ones?
Yep. Yeah, so I've been publishing there for 4 years, so it's a really
Okay,
extensive archive. I have a lot of it, quite a bit available for free, like all of
that's
the
great.
introductory, and then I have two paid tiers, the regular, monthly, annual, um, for moms. We have a few dads. We have also practitioners or grandparents there, and then I have a practitioner specific tier where I have a
Hmm.
whole curriculum for them that they get, and then yeah, I teach every so often, so everyone who's in the paid, gets to attend my classes for live, and then
Hmm.
I put out the replay behind the paywall. And then I just started doing these monthly check-in calls, and that's been going really beautifully. So when you're in the paid membership, yeah, we get a live on Zoom, and I also have a form where they can send their questions in before, so if they can't make it, I can still answer it. And we also have a group chat, so it's really a cozy space. Yeah, I do one-to-one consultations a little bit
Okay.
as well. So, yeah, my website is nikkokennedy.com and my Substack is brighterdaysdarkernights.com. And then, yeah, the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, you can find me there. And then we also have the Quantum Biology Collective podcast, which we're going to try to get you on there this next year. And that has a whole membership community that I also manage. And so I'm also inside of that all the time and give people support with DMs, and we teach classes and different things to support practitioners and help pair individuals with practitioners. So if you're looking for a specific type of practitioner that's quantum informed, then you would go through the QPC podcast. Yeah, so I've got a lot of different things, a lot of
You
different touch
do.
points, depending on
Wow.
what kind of support you need. Then I can send you into that right that right place for where you're headed in your journey.
Well, this is hopefully this is a compliment to you, but I was thinking, who do you remind me of? And I don't know, you're too many people wrapped up into one. But if I had to say, like, when you're in your zone of like distilling and sharing these salient points, I'm like, you're like the quantum plus grounded plus all the other words, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, I'm like, you're like journey through the stars and understanding who we are, and then you add in enhanced awareness of the quantum biology and ancestry, and you add in a couple other adjectives, yeah, you really do wear a lot of hats. But I can see this is just like your view of life, and these are the, kind of your palette of, your paint palette, not this palette, but your paint palette is like all these different hues and colors, and you put them together. So what an extraordinary kind of array of things that you're tackling in life, that you're pursuing. It's really inspiring, first of all. And then I can't wait I was just so excited to chat with you today and to see what our conversation would open up. But then
we never even got to how UV light transforms the thyroid hormones, but it's going to have to be another time. I do have to wrap today.
Yeah, no, that'll be a good teaser for the next time. And then also I'll tell people more. You can read my article, but I'll tell you more about the thyroid membrane and how very particularly unlocking that could lead to great, amazing benefits to breathing, feeding for babies, and then just whole body health too. So we'll have to do part 2 in some way, but I'm excited to continue our conversations. And yeah, so you have been such a great person to chat with, and everything you said, that'll be in the show notes for people to tune into. So any last statements before we finish today that you want to leave everybody with?
I call my publication Brighter Days, Darker Nights, because if nothing else, just increase the contrast. You want that warmer, brighter, more social, louder, fun, active daytime, and that cooler, dimmer, darker, quieter, more solitary nighttime, and that will help stabilize your circadian rhythm. It's really, really basic. So just, keeping that in mind, brighter days, darker nights. Even if you don't come and subscribe, just that as a way of life can help to bring about a lot of the transformations we talked about today.
Amazing. Well, thanks again. And really appreciate all you shared and journeying with all these little tech bumps and bruises, but we made it. So that's great. And then, so we'll conclude, and thanks for listening to the Compromised to Alchemized podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Please comment, tell us what you think, follow, and then we will see you another time.
This is major.
Thank you for listening to the Compromised to Alchemized podcast. Really excited to thank Jessica from Lunalux for the music, this track called Major. I want to thank Toshi, who originally did the design work for my cover art. And then I also want to thank Alyssa, my team, for podcast publishing, and my whole team, including Kat, for heading up my world. And then also definitely want you all to follow me on YouTube, follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast, comment, give us a rating, and also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Neil Bulchandani so you can stay tuned to my latest. Thanks so much, and you have an amazing day.